Is Meghan Markle's carefully crafted image about to come crashing down? As whispers grow louder about Jeffrey Epstein's secret files possibly containing shocking information about the Duchess, panic reportedly erupts in Montecito. What are these files? And why is Meghan at the center of this explosive rumor? Stay tuned. The subtle signs of impending turmoil emerged not through prominent headlines or formal statements, but within the obscure, labyrinthine forums of the online underground. In the shadows of the digital realm, a cryptic message surfaced from an unfamiliar source, its words rippling through the vast reaches of the internet. I spotted her in the company of that man, Meghan Markle, accompanied by Jeffrey Epstein. At first glance, such an association seemed too far-fetched, linking as it did two figures polarized in reputation, the Duchess of Sussex renowned for compassion and global goodwill, and Epstein infamous for crimes shrouded in mystery. Yet within moments, whispers exploded into roaring speculation across the tempestuous landscape of social media. Here doubt and outrage traveled side by side through hashtags and replies, fueled in equal measure. Long-forgotten photos re-emerged from the digital dust, as elsewhere a supposedly confidential guest roster took on new life, now spread unchecked amid the frenzy. The crowd had gathered with eager anticipation, all eyes fixed on the illuminated stage as the curtain slowly parted. There, beneath the spotlight, stood a lone figure whose presence commanded attention. It was she, Meghan Markle, whose arrival had set rumors aflame. Before long, details of that fateful night began to circulate among online circles in hushed tones, pieces of a puzzle slowly fitting together to reconstruct an event she had never spoken of. Though particulars remained obscured, circumstances hinted at a truth she wished to keep concealed in the refuge she now shared with Prince Harry along the Californian coast, far from prying eyes. Yet word travels swiftly, and with the coming of dawn her representatives sprang into action. Advisors raced against time to prepare, lawyers took to their tasks crafting statements, trusted media contacts received briefings on coordinated rebuttals. But this was no casual anecdote or unfortunate photo. What was unearthed struck to the core of her carefully built persona. More than mere gossip, it threatened to upend all she had constructed, the facade that had guarded her thus far now in peril. Difficult decisions surely lay ahead as light broke across the sky, heralding a new day and all that it could unveil. This revolved around a man whose name evoked visions of clandestine flights, enigmatic islands, an influence that seemed immune from accountability. Any affiliation, however fleeting or indirect, was considered precarious by Meghan, who was acutely conscious of scrutiny. The timing could scarcely have been less opportune. Already facing accusations of hypocrisy for advocating environmental responsibility yet using private planes and endorsing privacy while participating in multi-million-dollar entertainment contracts, Meghan and Harry were bereft of the protective shroud of Buckingham Palace's public relations might. Now confronted with a narrative threatening to entangle her in one of the era's most notorious scandals, Meghan found herself faced with a reality in which she had small influence over unfolding events. And therein lies the essence of a tale such as this. Rarely is it solely concerning a single night, incident, or photograph. As soon as the initial strand is pulled, additional threads begin to unravel. Within hours of the online leak's emergence, investigators delved profoundly into Meghan's early career, unveiling nuances glossy magazine profiles had never explored. They traced her Hollywood years, her networking in Toronto during her time on Suits, her benevolent endeavors, and even the intimate gatherings she attended before entering the royal family. Within these interconnected circles, a troubling design took shape. Links to individuals who, in various ways, had brushed shoulders with the network of Jeffrey Epstein, a financier here, a socialite there. While these names may have signified little to most, they were familiar to investigators and journalists. Though the connections were faint, they were sufficient to prompt inquiries. Once questions emerged, they proved much harder to quiet than rumors whispered behind closed doors. Meghan paced restlessly in a panic, her mind reeling with worry. Sources close to the couple, who whispered cautiously while concealing their identities, portrayed a tense situation. Meghan made frantic calls to lawyers, demanding answers. Was it a past acquaintance who had transformed into a foe, aiming to damage her name? Or was it a calculated move by someone within the palace, seeking to end her position in the royal family? For Harry, this nightmare was more than a threat to Meghan's reputation, it was a ghost from his past that he had long struggled to outrun. His wife had withstood unrelenting attacks and unfriendly coverage from portions of the British media, influences that were tainted with prejudice based on race and culture. Yet this new situation surpassed tabloid gossip and royal disagreements. It transcended typical royal disputes, evolving into something more ominous. This orbited surrounding being implicated in a scandal that had ruined political careers, disrupted Hollywood dynasties, and brought shockwaves in the highest echelons of global influence. Then, a depiction emerged. It was not a high-quality visualization. Its authenticity was questionable, but it portrayed a woman bearing a striking similarity to Meghan, sat at a luxurious dinner table, sporting a hairstyle she hadn't worn in years, beside a man partially obscured from view. The lavish surroundings hinted at a locale frequented by Epstein, marble floors, golden fixtures, and champagne flutes adorning the table. While the depiction did not offer concrete proof, public perception often carries more weight than truth. The response was swift. Online commenters scrutinized every nuance, comparing the attire to one Meghan had worn previously at a different public occasion. Analyzing her expression up close, speculating about the mysterious man beside her. Numerous theories surfaced. Some dismissed it as a complete fabrication, while others insisted it was the damning evidence linking her to Epstein's inner circle. The truth remained obscured. However, the harm had already been done to Meghan. Unlike a typical rumor she could brush off, this narrative only gained momentum when contested. Each denial prompted a rebuttal. Legal notices fueled further interest, and all attempts to redirect attention through charity work, interviews, or social media were overshadowed by a persistent question: was she involved or not? The tension not only loomed over her public life but also crept into her personal sphere. Longtime friends ignored her calls, and charitable organizations quietly reconsidered their collaborations. The joint projects with streaming platforms that the couple had undertaken faced scheduling delays. Meghan had carefully crafted a public persona centered on controlling perceptions of herself while maintaining influence. This barrage of attacks went far beyond a personal assault, it threatened her very existence. Yet unknown to her critics, there lay a pivotal piece of buried information that no one had pieced together, a fragment possessing the power to radically reshape the narrative and determine her fate. This crucial clue had long been interred within classified files, left undisturbed for years until a dissenting party unearthed it. Now the question was not just whether Meghan could weather gossip but if she could withstand truth. As online fervor escalated endlessly, one fact loomed large: someone was determined to bring this whole story into the light, stopping at nothing until their supposed knowledge saw daylight. The identity and intentions of this individual remained an enigma, compelling us to delve deeper into the core of this saga, a realm where loyalties shift constantly, adversaries hide in shadows, and the past is never really past. If any interaction occurred between Meghan Markle and Jeffrey Epstein, it represents but a small piece of a much more expansive and perilous scheme. Upon encountering the conclusive evidence, you may start to doubt all your preconceived notions about the Duchess of Sussex. This saga began on an otherwise obscure Tuesday when global attention was elsewhere, engrossed in different news cycles, economic projections, entertainment gossip, and political discussions. In a dimly backlit corner of the online realm, an ordinary article emerged, irrevocably transforming Meghan Markle's public persona. Without fanfare or a viral beckoning, the post quietly resonated, prompting reflection in its readers. The suggestion to cross-reference line 14 from the Palm Beach guest roster, her name appears there, carried considerable import. At first seeming inconsequential to the unacquainted, those well-versed in the Epstein scandal understood the reference to the Palm Beach guest roster carried profound implications. Within moments, a select group of specialists among specialized online forums began excavating archived materials, some previously sealed, redacted, or scattered across diverse legal documents. These diligent online researchers had devoted years examining Epstein's connections, fastidiously chronicling even the minutest nuances of his network. And there it was, embedded in an aged, typewritten register from an exclusive event over a decade prior, the name Meghan Markle. Inconspicuous, untouched, without a photograph, yet situated amidst a roster of affluent financiers, politicians, and celebrities, many of whom had striven to obscure their ties to Epstein. The document was meticulously compiled, with Mark's moniker situated strategically between two others known associates of Epstein's clandestine gatherings. This placement lent an uncanny plausibility to whispers already widespread. The initial screenshot capturing the papers was poorly focused, visibly taken hurriedly using a mobile device aimed at a computer screen. However, the blurred content spread expeditiously regardless. An online user reposted it, and shortly Instagram anecdotes began circulating the substance. Facebook groups devoted to royal exposes engaged in discussions regarding its authenticity. On YouTube, petite creators initiated uploading video clips speculating about Meghan's conceivable attendance at the affair and the rationales behind it. By midday, the leaked intelligence had made its way to primary social media, with hashtags like Markle manifestation, Epstein relation, and royal scandal trending. The swiftness at which the reports spread surpassed anything Meghan had formerly undergone, even amidst her most intense clashes with the British tabloids. Following the initial manifest imagery, more material was discharged. An anonymous account shared what were purported to be private email communications outlining travel schemes for the event. The emails were brief, filled with abbreviations and encrypted language, but one line stood out: "M confirmed will be in attendance." While there was no explicit mention of Meghan or her full name, in the midst of the online fervor, people filled in the gaps themselves. Meghan's stomach churned as realization dawned on those closest to her about the severity of the situation. Unlike past rumors about her personal life spread casually, this story delved into murkier waters with possible legal implications and the risk of irreversible damage to her reputation. She understood even if the connection was entirely fabricated, the online world's hunger for salacious gossip wouldn't pause to verify without proof. Meghan promptly contacted her legal team upon arriving at her Montecito home before discussing matters with Harry. She inquired about strategies to eliminate the document's circulation, uncover the original source of the leak, and enforce removing screenshots from social networking platforms. However, the response failed to satisfy her needs. Once something like this surfaced online, containment proved nearly impossible. Each removal request only fueled interests of those eager to spread it further abroad. Harry's reaction, as shared by an insider, varied from disbelief to outrage. Initially, he dismissed it as a vicious falsehood, another premeditated attack on his wife by individuals who never welcomed her inside the royal family. However, as time passed and more alleged evidence emerged online, his attitude shifted from dismissive to defensive. He comprehended how stories similar to this could escalate quickly. When the public grabs hold of a narrative, the facts become unimportant. By mid-afternoon, journalists started reaching out to palace contacts, former acquaintances of Meghan, and anyone with knowledge of her life prior to joining the royals. The palace watched from afar as their tabloid rivals grew bolder, one journalist brashly demanding answers about the mysterious list. Silence remained the strategy as tensions mounted, a decision resignedly made with the knowledge that defending past actions risks validating present attacks. In the digital realm, online sleuths dissected every minuscule detail with fervor, scouring travel records and old photos for clues. They scrutinized charity appearances and fashion shows, television shoots and magazine spreads, obsessively charting her movements. Some proclaimed to have found a gap, others insisted sightings in another land, with only speculation left to fill the void between claims. Then, a dubious audio file emerged, too scrambled to decipher with certainty yet just comprehensible enough to incite further theories. A sliver of a second claiming to recognize her voice, saying she would only linger an hour, devoid of names or context yet potent enough to perpetuate the narrative. Her team promptly dismissed the recording as fabricated given audio's malleability, though refutes did little to quell the growing frenzy. Online, impassioned debates raged through the night on forums, with polarized perspectives on whether the voice was real and what more may have been said. As speculation snowballed beyond containment, outlets prepared to dissect the developing saga not as proven truth but as a controversy unfolding before a captivated audience. The implications posed grave risks. Phrasing it in such a manner suggested the tale could unspool endlessly, unsettled for weeks on end or maybe even longer. That the intel was leaked, alongside the execution thereof, was transparent, premeditation fueled it. The gradual unveiling of evidence, cryptic clues, carefully scheduled disclosures all denoted experience beyond most. The attack was plotted, meticulously planned, and targeted Meghan's Achilles heel, her public persona. It wasn't just the manifesto's emergence that rocked the web world. The abrupt showing thereof, apparently backed by enough credence to sow uncertainty, synchronized across all platforms simultaneously. For Meghan, this denoted the outset of a harrowing ordeal, one the world couldn't turn away from. It served as a prelude to a scandal promising even more sensational chapters ahead. Before Meghan Markle assumed the role of Duchess of Sussex, before the royal titles, processions, and global visibility, existed a vastly different reality. She inhabited a sphere far removed from the glamour of palace life, centered on connections, networking, and social positioning. To comprehend how her name became entangled with Jeffrey Epstein's notorious circles, one must journey back to that earlier era. During her early 20s, Meghan focused on climbing the ladder, shaping her identity, navigating exclusive circles inaccessible to most. Balancing side hustles alongside her aspirations, she modeled on a game show, landed minor acting gigs, earned extra cash through freelance calligraphy for celebrity weddings. While not yet a household name, Meghan possessed a unique asset coveted by many aspiring actors, a keen grasp of social influence. She grasped the significance of visibility and understood that connections presented opportunities. It was during this phase that Meghan started mingling in spheres bridging entertainment and elite social circles, where Hollywood met influential financiers, political backers, and global philanthropists. These occasions allowed diverse personalities to interact discreetly through shared contacts, from glamorous premieres to sophisticated auctions. Gaining access to increasingly exclusive events beyond Los Angeles, Meghan found herself socializing with fellow young actresses, stylists, and publicists. Initially attending private gatherings in Hollywood Hills and soirees in Beverly Hills estates, she later ventured to film premieres after parties as her acting momentum grew. During Suits filming, Toronto became a second home, and the network expanded to include New York, Miami, and London. In New York and Miami, the distinction between legitimate gatherings and more secretive events began to blur, hosting Academy Award winners and hedge fund billionaires with careful security. Meghan's name started to associate with individuals later linked to Epstein's network, not directly seen with Epstein but often photographed alongside people linked to his properties, yachts, or flight logs. Indeed, at that moment those links meant nothing substantial to the general public, appearing as trivial aspects of exclusive social circles. However, with Epstein's misdeeds being revealed, the connections take on a darker connotation. A specific bond was through an art dealer renowned for arranging notable shows in New York, frequently associated with undisclosed financial backers. Meghan attended a pair of his functions during her Suits period, spotted in photographs with notable numbers subsequently connected to Epstein's inner circle. Some pondered if more could have been done to shed light on misused power and influence that allowed such crimes to endure for so long, shattering many innocent lives. Another entry was granted through a shared acquaintance in the fashion globe. Meghan's passion for manner and her relationships with creators unlocked possibilities inside the elite Vogue International. She frequently frequented top-profile occasions in New York and Paris, with some of those gatherings being economically supported via private traders who, unknown to numerous, have been tightly related to Epstein. Then, there have been no signs of anything amiss. Meghan became just one of many friends beaming for the photographs, networking, and soaking up the ambience. However, within the realm of reputation, politics, notion is paramount. Those previous photographs now carry a weight of their personal. It is key to note that in the course of this era, Epstein had now not but received the notoriety that would later engulf him in scandal. Whilst rumors circulated inside select circles, the broader public remained unaware of the extent of his misdeeds. Numerous celebrities, politicians, and enterprise magnates attended his capabilities without comprehending the darkness lurking beneath the glamour. These unfolding accusations pose a huge hazard for Meghan. The context has shifted, casting her previous associations in a much harsher light. In Toronto, Meghan's social circle expanded even greater. With the success of Suits, she grew to become a prominent determinant in the town's social scene. She cultivated intimate bonds with those firmly rooted in Hollywood and the global industry titans. Some acquaintances organized charity galas frequented by billionaires and influential figures worldwide. Shared guest lists connected these events to Epstein's renowned private parties. During this period, Meghan enthusiastically supported causes championing women's empowerment, gender equality, and humanitarian aid, aiming to bolster her public persona. This brought her into the orbit of generous benefactors, though some associations with Epstein remained obscure. A lavish waterfront gala in Miami featured celebrities, philanthropists, and business barons. While Epstein abstained from public appearances, associates photographed on his island attended. Years ago, a snapshot captured Meghan beside one host at the gala. Initially casual society snapshots, online sleuths now scrutinize connections. Circles sometimes introduce individuals with histories undisclosed, leaving Meghan, striving to enhance reputation, unaware of backgrounds encountered. Most interactions proved innocent, yet rumors circulated of exclusive post-gala gatherings with guest lists fitting a note. The play's significant deals allegedly transpired and secrets stayed confidential. Unclear if Meghan ever participated, mere speculation fueling controversy. The significance lies in demonstrating how names can unexpectedly surface across varied circles. The selection of invitees for elite gatherings is often carried out in curious manners. Occasionally, individuals are put on the list of probable participants despite the fact they do not show up later. Surprising +1 sometimes lead to unforeseen visitors, and sometimes the lists themselves endure modification even when the event has passed. However, in the unforgiving trial of popular view, delicacy is frequently among the first victims. Meghan's past experiences led her down intricate pathways entwined with misfortune, fueling censure from critics lusting to craft damning narratives. While royal matrimony eclipsed much preceding, the Internet's enduring memory resurrects all. Digital archives now effortlessly resurface fleeting snapshots and guest registers from years past. The leaked manifest didn't simply re-emerge one eve but peeled back a veiled chapter, threats looming over crafted tales. Scrutiny shifted to the notorious figure synonymous with scandal, Jeffrey Epstein, raising ominous queries: was there a direct correlation? This inquiry ushered a new phase centering on unearthed documents and lists, hints of increased involvement conceivable. Just as commotion surrounding the manifest leakage began subsiding within the royal family, a more unsettling development emerged. Rumors rippled of Meghan's documented appearance representing but a glimpse into a more expansive issue. Where investigative reporting and high-profile disclosures intersect, one rule persists. If isolated explosive material surfaces publicly, usually more revelations lay in wait, exposure impending. This principle held true in this instance. Speculation started proliferating in encrypted chat circles and whistleblowing channels where scandalous information often covertly circulates. Anonymous sources allege obtaining a much more thorough gathering of Epstein's private guest lists, featuring names never previously published in legal proceedings or news reports. These weren't incomplete records or redacted documents slowly emerging through media over time. It was suggested these represented the unmodified authentic archives, full lists from gatherings, private affairs, and covert meetings spanning decades. Merely this assertion sparked fresh conjecture waves. The scope of potential implications were immense, as accurate lists could impact those in Hollywood, on Wall Street, and reaching the inner circles of politics and royalty. For Meghan, laying bare on multiple guest roles heightened the risk of seeming an unsolicited disclosure rather than lone inadvertent revelation. The first hint more concrete evidence was forthcoming emerged from a prominent online investigator known to uncover documents left unpublished by mainstream media due to inability or unwillingness. Without naming Meghan directly, the blogger foreshadowed mysteriously, cross-tabulating visitors to Toronto with individuals in Palm Beach exposes an unexpected intersection. Those avidly following the scandal were encouraged patience. Referencing Toronto importuned significant insinuations. Immersed in filming suits, Meghan's social sphere faced intense examination after the initial leakage. Now, with the suggestion her time in Toronto coincided with Epstein-related happenings, online conjectures proliferated recklessly. New information ultimately surfaced as a greatly watermarked PDF circulated across several file hosting platforms. Spanning over 100 pages, the protracted dossier showcased a guest register from discrete occasions. Handwritten entries diverged, implying scans of physical paperwork rather than neatly typed records. Certain details beyond names included arrival times, seating plans, and sometimes who extended invitations. As one perused the pages, names of notable figures emerged: corporate executives, politicians, entertainers, and cover girls. Among entries from various years were a pair of separate listings featuring the name Meghan Markle. The first chronicled her attendance at a charity gala in Manhattan, while the other documented an intimate soiree in Miami. It bears mentioning that both of these events predated her romance with Prince Harry and her career in television. The details surrounding these records proved intriguingly sparse. The New York gala entry positioned her at a table with two distinguished financiers, one of whom was later revealed to have close ties to Epstein. On the other hand, the Miami dinner log indicated she sat beside an unidentified guest of the host, a term frequently employed in privileged circles to safeguard the anonymity of individuals. Whether the individual named that occupied the lavish private island was Epstein himself or another member of his inner group remained ambiguous. Merely insinuating such a thing was enough to sustain the ongoing dialogue. The credibility of these exclusive guest directories instantly became a subject of debate. Meghan's legal team, diligently laboring day and night, claimed that the records could have easily been adjusted, forged, or extracted from their proper setting. They underlined how the lists of attendees at secluded gatherings are notoriously unreliable. Handles might be appended without assent being given. Individuals could receive invitations but never in fact make an appearance. Occasionally, the staff would compile directories for administrative uses that did not precisely portray the true unfolding of happenings. However, as far as the general public was concerned, particularly those already inclined to assume the most negative prospects, these defenses just looked like simple attempts to diminish the damage. The recurring appearance of Meghan's name across different circumstances was enough proof for many to believe that the initial disclosure of the registry was not an isolated mistake. Media coverage escalated, with major reporters, cautious of unproven statements, publishing pieces under headlines like "Questions Multiply" concerning Meghan Markle's reported appearances on Epstein's guest lists and royal links to Epstein network under fresh scrutiny. Though the language employed was prudent, it did little to moderate the impact. In the court of public opinion, the persistent correlation of her name with Epstein's world built a bond that would be challenging to sever. At Harry and Meghan's seaside estate, unease was proliferating. Sources intimated late-night deliberations, pressing digital interactions with sympathetic journalists, and a spreading sense that the narrative was being propelled by someone with particular motivations. Meghan was said to insist that her team track down the origin of the documents, convinced this was not a haphazard disclosure but a calculated campaign. The inquiry into the disclosure's source raised disturbing possibilities. One hypothesis suggested that a past contact of Epstein's, who had negotiated with a tabloid, had possession of the attendee list. Another hypothesis indicated that an individual connected to royal circles had obtained the papers and was capitalizing on them in a broader effort to undermine Meghan. Further exacerbating the scenario was the actuality that some names on the roster were denying their involvement, casting uncertainty on the precision of the records. This uncertainty fueled suspicion that the lists may have been intentionally manipulated to maximize harm. While some persons vehemently denied their attendance, others stayed silent, leading to assumptions that their silence implied guilt. Moreover, the rosters unveiled patterns, with certain names recurring repeatedly across diverse events and specific clusterings of guests suggesting deeper bonds. Online researchers began to map these relationships using sprawling diagrams that connected Meghan to other attendees through mutual acquaintances, professional ties, and shared interests. While these diagrams did not offer conclusive substantiation, visually they portrayed an intimacy that was difficult to disregard. What made this phase of the royal rift perilous for Meghan was the fog of speculation. Even if she had attended one event or both, it did not necessarily prove personal connections within esteemed circles. Simply being present as a guest for an evening could permanently taint one's name through selective reports. Nuance held little weight in such a climate. Her name alone sufficed for some eager to undermine. The guest lists carried influential implications. They troubled remaining advocates, a maze of hints and coincidences open to interpretation. And for Meghan herself, they served as a stark reminder of fame's fragility. The exposure of these veiled records shifted focus. It grew beyond a single leak into rumored recurring visits that could suggest deeper alliances. Whether real or imagined had lost meaning. The plot advanced regardless of accuracy. In subsequent days, emphasis fell on timelines from the lists. The New York gala coincided with an undocumented year. The Miami dinner occurred when she had no major acting jobs, critics emphasized. The coincidences that initially aroused concern now led to accusations, though individually they meant nothing. However, for journalists it provided an intriguing tale that captivated attention. A more troubling element was how records, real or fabricated, invited further disclosures. Old images, prior discussions, casual references became potential proof in this scrutiny. The matter had expanded beyond mere claims into thorough public examination. In such a climate, what was divulged next could completely vindicate or utterly condemn her. Focus intensified on specifics. If Meghan appeared on these lists, precisely what connection did she have to those gatherings? Who invited her? Crucially, did she interact directly with Epstein himself? These queries stood on the brink of commanding center stage, ushering in an even riskier phase of unfolding events. The summer when her visible acts alarmingly aligned with Epstein's movements. To comprehend how 2006 emerged pivotal requires looking back at those seemingly regular months that darkened meaning. Then, Meghan Markle was a youthful, ambitious performer striving to build renown in a cutthroat industry. She had not yet assumed the confident, media-savvy persona that would later make her famous around the globe. During those early years, she worked tirelessly, grasping any acting roles that came her way, no matter how small. She took on various freelance jobs and networking opportunities, recognizing their value in furthering her career ambitions. For most aspiring entertainers, periods exist with minimal public exposure. That summer of 2006 proved an uneventful time in Meghan Markle's professional pursuits, with no roles of significance and a scant online presence. Now, revelations from the Epstein flight logs have cast new light on those otherwise undocumented months. On paper, her schedule contained only a handful of minor television appearances from the spring season and nothing major lined up until late September. Historical records offer little insight, as interviews from the period fail to discuss her activities, and acquaintances from the time either don't recall or prefer not to comment. The obscurity surrounding that period may have lingered indefinitely were it not for the disclosure of guest rosters connecting it to Jeffrey Epstein's social calendar. Summer 2006 marked a flurry of occasions in Epstein's life according to legal documents and probes, with many gatherings hosted in Palm Beach, New York, and the Caribbean islands. Epstein's circles at this time incorporated prominent figures from politics, entertainment, and high society, all converging on his exclusive events. Now, investigators are scrutinizing probable intersections between Meghan's whereabouts and Epstein's doings during that busy summer season. One of the recently unveiled guest lists is from the charity gala held in New York in July 2006, while the Miami dinner list is dated August of the same year. Both dates align with Meghan's quiet summer period. This intriguing timing alone could raise speculations, but online sleuths claim to have uncovered additional circumstantial proof. They refer to a grainy photograph taken in July at a lavish rooftop venue in New York. In the blurry image, a group of elegantly dressed attendees can be seen conversing over champagne off to the side, with one woman, resembling Meghan in physique and sporting distinct dark hair, elegantly attired in a form-fitting cream dress. While her face is not visible to the camera due to poor image quality, her stance and silhouette have led many to believe it is her. Notably, this photograph has not surfaced in any media prior to the leak. Allegedly, it was part of a private collection uploaded several years ago by a photographer specializing in exclusive events, only to be discreetly withdrawn from public circulation. The sudden reappearance and timing of Meghan's photograph circulating only serves to deepen the mystery for her critics. Speculatively, the photograph and the gap in her public schedule form a puzzling case open to interpretation. However, conclusively, they remain inconclusive at best. Being in New York in July 2006 was not uncommon for an aspiring actress looking to network and pursue opportunities. Amidst the frenzy caused by the leak, the straightforward explanations have been overshadowed by more sinister interpretations proliferating online. The inclusion of Meghan in an August Miami dinner entry raises several complex questions left unanswered. Despite lacking any known public or professional commitments in Miami that year, Meghan found herself at a table for 12 hosted by an unnamed, wealthy individual. Of particular concern is that a few of the other guests at the dinner reportedly have direct documented connections to Epstein, with 2 people later implicated in facilitating vulnerable young women for his events. Consequently, this has turned the Miami dinner entry into one of the most contentious pieces of the puzzling case. Adding to the intrigue is an obscure travel detail discovered by a diligent online investigator. Flight records leaked years later from an unrelated data breach reveal a booking for a first-class ticket from Los Angeles to Miami under the name M. Markle in mid-August 2006. While there is no absolute proof linking this booking to Meghan, airline manifests commonly feature name resemblances. Notwithstanding, the timing of the booking only 2 days prior to the Miami supper has sparked countless speculation. Meghan's team has been actively working behind the scenes to challenge the narrative surrounding her involvement at certain events. They have put forth alternative explanations regarding her whereabouts, including spending the summer visiting friends in California, participating in private acting seminars, and engaging in undisclosed charity work. Regardless of these efforts, the lack of verifiable evidence has failed to influence public opinion, which already leans towards doubt. The central question that both her detractors and supporters are grappling with is if Meghan had any direct interactions with Epstein during that particular summer season. As of now, there is no absolute proof such as photographs, emails, or credible witnesses placing them together in the same location. The absence of proof, however, does not conclusively rule out the possibility, and the web of indirect connections continues to fuel speculation. Epstein's behavior during that period does little to provide clarity. Those in his inner circle have described a heightened intensity in his social engagements, suggesting he was solidifying his influence. Moving between his properties effortlessly, he hosted events that blurred the boundaries between business networking and personal gratification. Guest lists were fluid, making it challenging to track attendees at each gathering. Should Meghan have attended any of these events, whether knowingly or not, she would have been among countless individuals lured into a world that, while glamorous on the surface, concealed more sinister undertones. For a young actress like Meghan aiming to advance her career, such events provided opportunities for valuable connections and networking that could potentially lead to promising prospects down the road. However, with the clarity of hindsight, the story surrounding these experiences has evolved in notable ways. Had Meghan participated in one or more of these gatherings, whether intentionally or accidentally, she would have found herself immersed in an extravagant world disguising disturbing deceptions underneath. To an aspiring actress eager to broaden her horizons, it could have simply appeared as another evening for mingling and schmoozing, another step towards a more successful career path. Yet retrospect now paints those steps as potential missteps, overshadowed by Epstein's unsavory involvement. What renders that summer of 2006 particularly impactful in this developing scandal isn't solely the possibility of involvement but also the conspicuous lack of solid alibis. With no definitive public records to fill this void, the space between established facts expands enough to spawn endless speculation. It is within this treacherous terrain where reputations are exceedingly vulnerable, where verifiable truths, conjectures, and outright lies can intermingle without clear demarcation. In the years following, Meghan had been prudent in crafting her public narrative, frequently presenting curated glimpses of her past in interviews and lifestyle features. However, the events of that fateful summer continue casting a lingering shadow. Now, she is no longer in control of what, or at least how they may be perceived as. Expect every effort to plug the leak to simply attract more eyes to the cracks. Every denial is met with a new wave of questions from those who are convinced the truth is still hiding. What was once a hollow shell in the narrative arc of Meghan's life now amounts to the summer of 2006. This is a battlefield, this moment in the timeline where her supporters and detractors are at war over interpretation. In the court of public opinion, this fact may be immaterial, although whether or not the truth eventually does see the light of day. The riddle is the story, and as emphasis shifts to this critical juncture, so too does the through line of scandal. But the Epstein saga has taught the world one critical lesson: no reputation, it turns out, is bulletproof. Disclosure, once initiated, as in the case with Meghan, now runs amok. The news came out leak, and Harry's first reaction was to dismiss it as a new low and sabotage against his wife. However, this instance was distinct. It was not about an article of clothing, or a spat between royal family members, or a tactical slip. This was intertwined with Jeffrey Epstein, a name so toxic that it could make you guilty by association, no matter how far from the original leak. Harry had reserved his disgust for the media and the masterminds behind the narrative. As a source in the Sussex inner circle described, he was pacing up and down the living room in Montecito on his phone, calling people in England and asking for legal advice. This time, though, he said it felt like boundaries were invaded and added that for him. Nevertheless, he told Meghan that is part of the game and that she shouldn't take it to heart, telling her that if they behaved the truth will out. Yet as details continued to leak out, from the leaked manifest to concealed guest lists, and a spate of events unearthed that dated all the way back to 2006, scratchily defended certainty morphed, in private, into mounting concern. the tension between them began to become palpable. As Meghan was fully in battle mode, meeting with her lawyers and beginning to put crisis statements together as they forensically went through every social interaction from her past that could be used against them online, determined to fight back hard in a bid to counter the emerging narrative. Harry, meanwhile, hesitated as the risks of a response crossed his thoughts. Knowing what the palace was capable of, he also worried that lashing out could give rise to further rumors. It was not only a question of what to do but also one of the consequences that might come from it, with cracks in their solidarity starting such an effort. But things came to a head in an argument that Meghan had about Harry's approach when she was feeling let down and didn't think he was moving quickly enough. She wailed that their enemies were coming for her and attacked Harry for standing idly by, waiting for the storm to pass. Harry, just as frustrated, shot back that she didn't see the forest for the trees. To fight back against every tabloid headline was seen as a futile task that would drain their resources and energy rapidly. Harry had no doubt that she was blameless, his doubt lay in their victory in the specific fight. The leak was perfectly timed and precisely aimed, clearly an example of deliberate strategic planning rather than the casual gossip equals. Harry feared that whoever masterminded this hit might have dirt or bombs to explode in less opportune times. But with an increasing sense of disquiet, Harry wondered what else Meghan had put aside about her pre-palace life. He knew she was affiliated with go-getting social strata, but he had still been surprised that even in the confines of marriage some parts of her history would remain unexplained. Invasive media coverage did little to calm his nerves. Old military acquaintances sent news links and feedback through various mediums, some expressing empathy while others jumped straight to the point. Although Harry had turned to contacts for help, all he could glean was a mysterious foreboding to watch out. Harry felt unsettled during harrowing time court papers reveal / The atmosphere grew oppressive. Staff noticed the pair wafting through the mansion like ghosts of their former selves. Shade was seated in one room, typing away at her laptop and on a mobile call, while Harry spoke on the phone from another. Many meals were eaten in chilling silence. Their children continued their routines, but under it all was an unspoken agreement: no one would let the tension out in front of them. Yet for every conversation, the question that always loomed large was, what to do next? Harry began reaching out to American legal individuals, feeling he couldn't just rely on his present attorneys, along with specialists in cyber investigations of defamation and reputation management. He wanted to know if it would be possible to trace the leak all the way back to its root. He gathered a chorus of voices that said tracing the original source would be near impossible without legal involvement, and even then achieving full anonymity online is hard to believe. One investigator suggested that the origin of the leak could have been someone with access to old Epstein records, such as a former confidant or an opportunist hoping to sell names. For all the detail Harry was now uncovering of these breaches, so kind principles felt nearer confirmed to him, they were under siege. If this was a well-planned attack, Meghan may not be the only one being targeted. She could just be the beginning of a broader strategy to corrupt them as well. Which recognition, in turn, began sapping at his conclusion. Harry knew from experience that if the media had decided on a narrative, acting one way or another could be just as bad as an overreaction. Memories of how the palace had mishandled media attacks on his mother were fresh in his mind. We have left Diana to fight so many battles by herself. A few nights later, feeling tense and festered inside, Harry made an internal pledge that Meghan would never be put in such a position again. After months of intense media scrutiny, Harry allegedly told Meghan, "If we don't control this, it will control us." It was a turning point evening. He then the next day started putting together a strategy with their legal and PR teams. They wanted not just to deny the accusations, but also to get ahead of them. Their plan included making public statements, legal options they might be able to take, and an investigation about how leaked documents had come from. Hermione and Harry packed themselves for a fight, but the suspicion lingered in Harry that they never seemed to catch up with the story. New information kept bubbling up, a picture, new allegations, and old Meghan stories. The synchronized manner in which these disclosures surfaced gave Harry reason to believe that an intentional effort had been made to undermine the defenses they had erected. The pressure boiled over in recent days as Walker either scaled back or cancelled altogether planned public appearances. According to Meghan, this was due to conflicts of schedules, whereas Harry said it was down to family commitments. But those near were aware this was to cover for a completely different reason. To die from a press massacre before the scandal had been wrapped up was something they couldn't afford. This only fueled Harry's erratic emotions that raged through him when no one was around to know. Other days he refused, chose to resist every insinuation. At other times, he seemed defeated, resigned to the fact that they were never going to get a fair shake in the court of public opinion. And Meghan, for her part, had a stubborn persistence in clearing her name. They butted heads and it was uncomfortable at times, but their different ways of dealing with scrutiny stopped things from completely coming off the rails. When one failed, the other went on. It was a pivotal moment in yet another late-night heart-to-heart with his most trusted confidant, who later confessed Harry had become consumed by the conversation. A confidant shared that Harry had said he did not think Meghan had knowingly done anything to become personally connected with Epstein, but knew the appearance could always be held against them. And he allegedly said, "Doesn't matter what the truth is. The only thing that counts is how they experience it." This stark reality resonated deeply. It was only half the battle to embrace a personal truth, it was even more important to harness the power of perception, something that when wielded correctly could have bearing on another person or people. Harry better than most knows this fact. He experienced it since he was a child. Initially Harry played a reluctant participant, as his role developed into an active strategist. He began calling media friends and trying to arrange discreet background briefings to shoot down the dominant narrative. Working with lawyers, he explored a lawsuit against media outlets that he felt were skirting the lines of defamation and, possibly most importantly, he started arguing for an expanded private investigation of Epstein associates who might want to attack Meghan now. Whether it was out of vengeance, a political play, or some personal vendetta, Harry would get to the bottom of what happened. Acknowledging that detecting the origin may halt the deluge of harmful information from spreading further. But he knew to reveal the source might expose more about Meghan than either were ready to face. In private, Harry's answer is less a simple story of blind protection techniques or silent doubts. Instead, it mixed allegiance with fear and anger, and then some slow recognition that they could not lose this fight. This was a colossal move, for Meghan, yes, but also for their paired fate. Another front quickly formed as Harry went into a combat stance. Now, one that he had not completely seen coming. But Buckingham Palace had been quietly discussing how to handle the fallout even as they were still dealing with the latest publication of extracts of the book. It was nothing new if the narrative developed to a stage that Buckingham Palace could no longer maintain with the Royal Association scandal. The monarchy had weathered countless scandals before, love affairs, betrayals, divorces, and a whispering campaign of conspiracy theory. Yet there was one category of scandal which struck a greater terror across the fabric of the institution than any other. After all, a delicate but immediate link to an extensively vilified and shadowy figure morphs into the potential for irreparable diplomatic damage to both the royals. Bringing up Meghan Markle and associating her with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, the risk to being taken out was very great. Although Harry and Meghan stepped back as senior royals in 2020, the palace knew that this did not always play out with public perception. To most of the world, Meghan still belonged largely to the royal family. Her elevated rank, union, and proximity to Harry put her under the royal spotlight, so the things hashed out against her came right back at the coronet. And that realization had caused the palace to start quietly coordinating how they would respond. Those first meetings were held in private at Clarence House with the help of veteran senior aides who had dealt with royal crises before. They settled in the private conference room with folders on the table and phones turned in, the Lord Chamberlain's office leading the discussion with his communications director alongside a team of PR gurus recruited from top London agencies. At the beginning, the key goal seemed simple: to assess the magnitude of risks. The information looked into includes the accusations, how far they had spread, and if there was any hard evidence to suggest Meghan and Epstein were linked. While there were mass speculation throughout the internet, they continued focusing mainly on proven facts. That situation alarmed the palace. The moment speculation becomes a front-page crisis, begging for a response from the public. One person started by giving a plain assessment. The problem of being falsely linked to wrongdoing, even if she is innocent, that connection will forever stain her image. Others concurred. They previously watched this movie. How the public would hold on to even the hint of something amiss, and make it a proven fact. There was also a larger question: should the palace even get involved? Technically, Meghan was no longer a working royal. The official line after she and Harry quit was that they are now financially independent. Ignoring it completely carried its own dangers, as the British tabloid press was always happy to weave royal intrigue into their stories. Suddenly, the debate would become whether or not monarchy properly evaluates. So why was she even allowed to come into the royal family? Did anyone know about these supposed connections beforehand? They made the decision to covertly monitor its narrative arc. A group of researchers spent the time watching and transcribing all type of mentions of Meghan, from the biggest press to key environmental blogs. Meanwhile, yet another team began reaching out to press contacts, some from decades of familiar collaboration with reporters and editors. These interactions were subtly couched as questions of accuracy and the avoidance of making unfounded allegations when the palace needed to spin a narrative, perhaps softening or delaying. In the palace, internal researchers were also digging through archives, event logs and photos of period archiving. Their goal was not to specifically incriminate Meghan. Their aim instead was to search for anything concrete that could differentiate her from the timeframe being peddled around by online sleuths. A good alibi for what happened in the summer of 2006 would work better as an inoculation, although early findings inspired fear. For much of 2018, Meghan had very few public engagements, and there was a noticeable lag in between her being spotted moving from place to place. They were restricted to a set of insider crisis managers. Less people were informed, which decreases the chance of leaks from within, yet there were still whispers. Over whispered palace gossip, there were claims that palace aides who recalled the fierce behind-the-scenes battles were checking on the Duchess's background in a similar way. The feel of the Diana era was uncannily familiar. The palace also considered the necessity for a plan in case she died, as part of an internal review. Should things start to spiral and public outcry escalate, it was conceivable that further, stronger action might be necessary, that which definitively and inescapably placed the crown at odds with Meghan. That could mean a written statement which makes clear she will not perform tasks on behalf of the firm, or potentially even going to the extreme and recommending stripping her of her title. Those were decisions not to be taken lightly. In royal land, titles are stripped with all the heavy-handed reluctance of a last resort. Too little too late, that is bad neutral words for taut fisticuffs. Still, some of her senior advisors argued that entering these talks was vital because the name has become synonymous with her. One person even went as far as saying that preventing the Sussex name from being associated with Epstein deserved to be able to do so without punishment. Meanwhile, away from the public eye, the palace set up lines of communication with Harry. They were all established through third parties, not with direct input from senior royals but via shared contacts that could convey messages without drawing attention. The implication was unstated but obvious: the palace will keep silent on the scandal, at least publicly, for as long as it does not threaten to topple the monarchy. However, they used a strong word of caution with Harry and Meghan. Even so, This advice came alongside the understanding that Harry was already under pressure from Meghan and their lawyers in the US not to do anything for which it might be necessary to consult them or give heads-up warnings, so he accepted this as both directions and a caution sign. With the knowledge he had of how the palace communicated, he knew what that message meant: steer way clear or risk blowing your cover entirely. A reminder to the Sussexes that even if far away, the family remained powerful and could choose to protect itself over Harry and Meghan. At the same time, the palace communications team subtly masterminded a push towards positive royal work and charitable news to control what appeared as key messages in the press, deciding instead to flush out negative articles with images of Prince William with his children or Charles hugging Harry, as we witnessed this winter, for fear that any direct contact would implode into other headlines about Meghan's Epstein ties. But the palace knew that this was only a temporary fix. If the smoke turned into say an audio tape or video proof against him, it would be impossible to bury those under advantageous press. Those fears escalated when a major U.S. news outlet began investigating the leaks surrounding guest lists and attempting to reach witnesses from the related events. If the inquiry descended into televised interviews or long-read specials, however, it could quickly undo the palace's tireless containment operation. Aware of this, a second series of high-level discussions occurred with lawyers on hand to explain the stakes if things went wrong. Albeit the monarchy's uninvolvement in any criminal liability, connections to influential figures such as Epstein could significantly dent the reputation of the institution. Meghan's rumored connections could result in fallout worse than Meghan being dubbed an elitist and potentially alienating her conservative supporters over their precious big game hunting animals. Probably the most outlandish possibility was that, were the scandal to break, possibly a strategic distancing maneuver. The palace might emphasize the fact that Meghan had not been working royal for years, framing what she had done as a reflection of her personal experiences rather than the institution itself. In essence, it would be a way to exile her without the legal hassles of stripping titles. Conversations about Meghan were always tainted, however, with an unspoken fear of what cutting ties with her would do to Harry. As much as the Sussexes would like to separate the monarchy from Meghan, that simply cannot be done without drawing Harry into its orbit and causing an even greater split between them and the rest of the family. A decision regarded as risky by some, who saw the pitfall that Harry might once more elicit public sympathy, recast as a victim of an institution prepared to further its own ends by throwing family members under the proverbial bus. After all, there was no definite answer. The palace decided to keep the situation under surveillance, continue to receive information and reflect on possibilities. The plan for now was to shut up, not out of indifference, but because pretty much everything the Abbott team says can be twisted into an embarrassing story. However, an air of apprehension remained at the palace as senior staff stayed on high alert long into the night to counter any more damaging disclosures. There was a sense, unspoken but felt throughout the palace, that walls were closing in, from beyond Meghan to engulf not just her but the monarchy itself. The illusion we could be safe from the type of scandal is farther than the biggest distance between 2 points in creation. The Epstein name is a blot that seeps through every relationship, every association. Innocents are tarred by association even if they themselves were never accused. Buckingham Palace knew that if there was one sensational revelation in particular, action would have to be taken. Gossip suggested that some powerful new evidence, more damning than anything we had ever seen before, just waiting to pop out from the center of the media circus. This long-awaited truth bomb would introduce the next chapter, a whirlwind of media that Meghan, Harry, nor Palace could withstand. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update on royal scandals and breaking news.